Nothing in this podcast is intended as investment advice, and the people in this podcast may hold positions in the stocks they talk about. Do not buy any investment based solely on a tip or recommendation. Please do your own research.
Hello and welcome to the Midweek Takeaway. Today we're joined by Professor Richard Conroy of Conroy Gold and Natural Resources. Welcome back, Richard. How's life treating you?
Life is treating us very well indeed. It's a delight to see our drilling program getting underway, expanding, results starting to come in, core being cut. It's really tremendous. Wish we could have done it a few years ago, but it's great to see it happening now. So it's really, really delighted and pleased. And contrary to what some people may think, it's actually got underway rather quickly. Because, of course, it's a very measured, deliberate program. These are not just random exploration holes. They're holes to extend the resource, both in all directions and indeed to depth as well, and holes which are drilled with a very serious purpose of bringing in a mine, seeing just the extent of first of all, the Clontibret target, but also the other fairly major targets which are scattered across the new gold district that we've discovered. It's a very nice situation in which you now have the funds in which to have a very major program. And we're just seeing the start of that program at this stage, but it's really nice to see it beginning.
Yeah, sure. So obviously you're alluding to the initial drill results from Clontibret, where I believe there was step-out drilling also intersected the new zones of gold, as you just said. So, it looked like that those grades were pretty good to me, and it's obviously extended the stockwork. Do you want to just talk the listeners through these results?
Yes, the results are very good indeed. It's some of them are in themselves very, very good results in the widths and the grades and so on. But even more important is the fact that this is extending the resource out by several hundred meters, which of course has all sorts of implications for the ultimate size. So they're very pleasing results to see, and this program will be continued now for the next while, and then gradually expanded further, because the object of the exercise, as you know, is to bring in a mine. Look forward very much to moving in that direction. It could be quite a substantial mine.
Okay, very good. So, Professor, when we talk about the results, there was one hole, obviously, that had a lot more gold, and that was on strike, I take it. And it seemed to be that the gold was getting effectively more concentrated the deeper it went. So how do you view this?
Well, that is something which very frequently happens with ore bodies, in that the gold grades closer to surface, they tend to increase as you go deeper. And remember, in Clontibret and indeed elsewhere in the district, we've gone down only to levels of a couple of hundred meters by and large. And the resources that we're talking about, and you may remember between Glennish, Clontibret, and Clay Lake, we have an exploration target of approximately 8 to 9 million ounces, and that's not including the 500,000 that's already been estimated in the center of the resource. So you're looking at a fairly substantial number of ounces by any standards. But of course, that's only down to 250 meters. And from what we're seeing, the lodes extend down further. And as you suggest, they could possibly get richer as you go down. But without any of that, we still have quite a large resource in Clontibret and coming up over the horizon in Clay Lake, and very likely in Glennish as well. So you have a stretch of about 8 to 10 kilometers long, in which you have pretty substantial ounces of gold present, and possibly a lot more to be found. And that, of course, is only just the northeastern section of the district. Remember, it stretches for about best part of 40 miles. And we're still seeing gold at the other end of the 40 miles. Now, obviously, it's not going to be the continuous the whole way through, would that it were. But nonetheless, there are a series of gold intersections, of potential deposits right along that 40-mile stretch. So at the moment, big though and all, though the northeastern end is, with target, as I'm saying, of about 8 million or so ounces of gold, and the superficial or shallow levels down to 200, 250 meters. There's a lot more to come, in all probability, a great deal more to come. So it's very exciting, and it's tremendous now to be in a situation in which one is able to run a major drilling program, which is really only just getting underway at the moment, but it's marvelous to see it not only start, but the first results to start coming in. So it's a very good position, that very interesting, very exciting, and look forward to a lot more as we move on with the program.
So, Professor, the Clontibret, if we just look at Clontibret, and I remember visiting it with yourself, and the farmhouse, and as you go down towards the stream, yes. And then we've gone 200 meters one way, and then we've gone over to the other side of the hill as well, another 200 meters or plus. So is it feasible then that within the Clontibret area there, based on even what we know already, that we've got a couple of million ounces of gold in that open pit? Is this realistic? 100,000 ounces of gold a year for 20 years? I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I'm trying to make people envisage what this is all about. Am I?
Well, you're certainly right about the likelihood of 2 million ounces or perhaps more in the Clontibret area. Whether it would be in a single pit or a series of hits, but that's looking at a conventional open pit or series of pits. And yes, certainly you could eventually mount up to that sort of number of ounces per year. But clearly we'll be looking at it from an overall point of view and having a look at what the situation is, as I've just been mentioning, a little deeper down. Because now we're moving to the stage in which it's no longer an exploration program, but rather one of delineation and moving towards a situation which will be bringing in the mining geologists and so on to determine, well, what is the best approach from a mining point of view? And that, of course, is a whole new ballgame. But if you compare the Clontibret area or moving for a moment to the adjacent Clay Lake area, you're looking at very extensive areas, and it's quite possible that you could have quite significant ore there and ounces per annum in due course, but we're still at a very early stage of estimating it, still at a very early stage of deciding how to go about it. Do you, first of all, have an open pit on a relatively limited area, and then follow that up by a deeper pit or by an adjacent pit? Do you follow it up by going deeper? And one of the fascinating things is that so many similarities are coming both with the type of the ore and metallic characteristics of it and the actual situation with known considerable quantities of gold at a relatively shallow level. It literally comes up to the surface in certain parts. And yet with the possibility of going quite deep. And as your previous question referred to, the possibility of the grades of gold increasing substantially as you go deeper. And you've certainly seen that, for example, in the Fosterville mine out in Australia, where for many years it was conventional open pit at relatively shallow levels. And then they realized when you go a bit deeper that it became very rich indeed, and it's an excellent mine. Now, I'm not saying we've got that, but we're certainly very, very good potential indeed. And we've got it in more than one place.
Very good. So tell the listeners how many assays are currently being examined and ready to come out for results.
Well, this initial program, as I think we announced in the 2,000 meters to 3,000 meter mark, obviously, if you're intersecting gold, you may drill a bit deeper and so on like that. While you're in mineralization, you tend to keep on drilling. And then the number of assays that you do relates to what the geologists see as mineralized or potentially a mineralized core. That's a major part of the work. When you drill a hole, you get this cylinder of core. At first, it will be probably barren rock, although in actual fact, we often see gold quite close to the surface. And the geologist will log this core. They'll carefully examine it geotechnically, geologically, in all sorts of ways. And then having done that, they will select those parts of it which clearly have gold in them or possibly have gold in them. And those are the parts that they will then cut for sending to the laboratory for sampling. And we're very fortunate in Ireland that we have a major international laboratory, part of the ALS group, is located at Lochray in County Galway. That's only about, I suppose, about 80, 90 miles away from site. So we don't have the problem of sending core from somewhere in Africa to right over to Australia or North America or Europe to be analysed. But nonetheless, partly thanks to COVID, all the laboratories worldwide, all the leading laboratories are having a great burden of samples coming to them, because for a while, of course, the mining was very much delayed while COVID was in operation, either delayed or slowed in one instance or another. But nonetheless, yes, we will have a series of results coming out as the current drilling program progresses.
Okay, so we have more assays coming in the coming weeks, you believe, or it's going to take a bit longer?
Coming weeks, yes, and yes, indeed, coming weeks, coming months. Then we'll review the situation and decide how to further expand and extend the program. It's a very big area, remember, of nearly 1,000 square kilometers. So it's pretty big. Can't all be covered at this stage, but I might just mention that in addition to the work that's going on at Clontibret, with a view to bringing in a mine there, of course, a lot of work, not necessarily drilling, it could be deep overburden sampling, it could be geophysics or whatever, is going on all the other licenses and all the other potential targets. And one of the great things of having a joint venture partner is, of course, we now have the finance to do such an extended program. Indeed, it's part of the agreement, a very specific part of it, not only the expenditure of 5.5 million on phase one in relation to the Clontibret project, but also that expenditures be made absolutely, at least the minimum expenditures on all the other licenses. So the overall program is greatly increased in addition to the specific drilling program at Clontibret and elsewhere.
And you've also obviously alluded to in the RNS that there's there's two rigs on site, third one to come, and potentially more in the future.
Yes.
In all paid for, no dilution. Very minimal amount of shares in circulation. Almost pinching yourself in reality to the position you're in. Really,
it's a very good deal for us, and it's a very good deal for our colleagues as well. Obviously, they have an entire new gold district in which, on any given project, they can go up to 57.5%. In most instances throughout the world, if a new area is discovered, it's divided up between, first of all, a series perhaps of junior companies who explore it, and some of them are lucky and some of them not so lucky, and then 2 or 3 majors coming in, splitting up the area between themselves, or maybe more than 2 or 3, 4 or 5 of them, because they tend to congregate together. But in this instance, I suppose partly because of its geographical location, people hadn't really thought of Ireland for gold, as they used to think of Ireland for minerals at all, until we came along with Galmoy and Tara people with their huge mine there, and zinc mine. So it was possible for us, being prepared to work steadily at it, and also because of the licensing system in Ireland, which is not one in which you pay rental or anything of that nature. What you do is carry out a work commitment, which is very good from both the point of view of discovery and very good from the point of view of the company. And that if you fulfill your work commitment and you're getting somewhere, you're not paying any rent, which doesn't go into the ground. Equally well, you're not having to give up acreage. And so we were gradually, took many years, as you know, gradually able to acquire what seems to be pretty well the entire new gold district that we've discovered. And in turn, that enabled us to do a joint venture when the Deemer Export people approached us, and indeed there were others very interested, in which they were able to get an entire gold district with the possibility of majority control in any particular project in it, which they so wished. But equally well, and very, very unusual for a junior exploration company, no matter how successful or how lucky, we're in the position in which we can retain up to 42.5% of any project. And that's a really marvelous position to be in. And we can even have alternatives on that. We could have a 25% carried interest, for example. And if you put that in the context of most juniors would regard themselves as very lucky to retain as much as 10% of a discovery. Many of them have less than that, indeed. So it's a marvelous opportunity for us and a tremendous opportunity going forward. So we're very, very happy with it. I don't think it's appreciated. I think the market has no idea of it. And indeed, one had the almost comic reaction in that we brought out our first news release indicating assay results, and very good results, and the share price actually went down.
Yeah.
But I think the market is pretty tight, and at some stage or other, we'll probably see what we saw at Galmoy, Galmoy is very big and mine for a number of years, but nonetheless it's very small compared with the entire gold district. But nonetheless, we saw the price in Galmoy, even after we'd issued statements on the discovery and so on, it was hovering down around the 20s. And then eventually some people with a bit of knowledge of the industry began to buy in, and then others followed, and it went up over the 100p, over the 200p, and had gone up to, I think, 750 when we split it at that stage. So if things go well, obviously there are no guarantees, but equally well, people can do very well indeed if we have continued, if there is continued success.
Yeah, this reminds me really of exactly what happened with Greyland Gold in Australia.
Yeah, indeed.
Because, people were talking, they've only got this many ounces, and the share price went up, and then the share price went down. And now look at it, Newcrest have come in, which you already have a partner. Yeah. And they're celebrating the fact that they have 30% now of the whole deal, and they have 30% of the deal, and the share or the market capitalization of that company is in excess of £400 million. Yes, they've nominated now about 6 million ounces, I think, is what it's been JORC reported. But you're going to be there in a couple of years' time, I think, based on the situation. And your current market cap is £10 million or thereabouts, or less. So it doesn't add up. It really doesn't add up.
Well, it does in the sort of way that people just haven't taken it on board.
The market's broken at the moment anyway, like a lot of things.
It's not a good market, but some people will make a great deal of money out of it.
Absolutely, those who hold and are patient will see a good return.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, even just looking at Clontibret, and that's what I was trying to sort of get the message of for people. Like, we've seen Clontibret, we've been down to the stream, we've seen the drilling going on, and obviously those results that came out were the drilling that was happening when we were there in May time, I think. So there has been big delays, obviously, for the assays and all the rest of it. Then, unfortunately, that's a reality. But we saw that, and I can envisage myself in my head now, as you say, an open pit or smaller open pits to take the gold out, and that's going to happen. And even in your RNSs, you were talking about the sheds increasing because you're going to have so many more cores to keep to understand the geology of this situation as you go. And in a few years' time, this is going to be producing X thousand ounces every year. And it's almost a certainty now. Otherwise, why would they have signed this joint venture agreement and be spending this much money if they didn't think it was going to happen? They would not.
No, there are a number of parties interested as far as that goes. You couldn't help but be interested from first of all, from a technical point of view, and then obviously financial follow-on to it. But you've been there, as you say yourself. You've seen, for example, our core sheds. They're modern sheds, well organized, I think you said, and quite extensive. And yet, in actual fact, we're going to have to almost immediately start doubling that capacity, and no doubt a great deal more over the fairly near future. It's a quite major operation, and that relates primarily at this stage only to Clontibret. And Clontibret in itself is certainly not to be sniffed at, because, as you say, you're looking there at 2 to 3 million ounces down to 200 or 300 meters sort of thing. What's below that? And Clontibret is only just one part of the northeastern area with two other known potentially large deposits. Certainly the Clay Lake deposit and the area there is far greater than Clontibret. So there could be a lot more there. And that in turn is just the northeastern end of the 40-mile trend, and we have licenses, or joint venture licenses now, of course, over the entirety. No doubt there'll be some things around it that we'll have missed or we'll pick up later, and so on. But we've got a pretty substantial area.
I think we'll wrap up. We've got some very, very good discussion going on there. So, Professor Richard Conroy, thanks very much for your time.
Pleasure. Thank you.
This podcast was brought to you by Roast PR Limited. If you would like to appear on a future episode of The Sunday Roast, please email admin@thesundayroast.net.